Welcome to the Fiscally Awesome Podcast. I'm your host, Matt Gardner, co-founder and CEO of Hiline. Today on the podcast, we have Rebecca Bostwick, principal at Bostwick Strategy Group. Rebecca does a lot of deep work, strategy work with nonprofits. So we're going to continue our march in spotlighting guests who work in the nonprofit space. And today we're going to talk all about how we thread together strategy and funding. So let's get into it. Hey, Rebecca, Welcome to the Fiscally Awesome Podcast. How you doing?
I'm happy to be here.
We're happy to have you. So today we're going to dig into one of the most important and often overlooked truths about nonprofit and small businesses. And that is not all money is good money and how to align strategy with funding decisions. So I know you have a lot of great opinions and experience around this.
Yes.
But before we get into it, and I know it's going to be a spirited discussion and I love your energy, but maybe just set the table, just who you are, your background, and kind of what you've done in your career to this point.
Yes. So most of my 25-year career has been in the social sector. So small nonprofits, higher education, national nonprofits, medical universities. So I've had quite an experience. And most of the roles that I have been the first in that role. So I'm a naturally curious person. I ask a lot of questions. I love building stuff. I love the creativity and the team dynamic. So that has really been the through line through a lot of my roles and then leadership roles. And in 2018, I'm like, I'm not ready to full-time do consulting. I think it might be something I want to do. So I set up my LLC and I'm like, this is a sort of just in case, let me see what happens. And I started doing a little bit of the consulting. And then worked nationally for a few organizations. And then in 2024, I was like, you know what? I'm ready. I'm ready to do this full time. And so I work with nonprofits and governments in two areas, whether that's strategic transformation projects, so longer term projects that we can get into, and then more strategic advising, like maybe not so much a project deliverable, but working with CEOs and their leadership team and boards to be really that partner along the way. So really a boutique focus. I only take on so many clients at a time because I really like embedding with the clients and working with them long-term and really viewing this as a partnership more than a transactional, here are the deliverables, see you later. So I'm really invested in their success.
And you're in North Carolina?
I am. I'm in Asheville, North Carolina. Spent most of my career in Syracuse, New York, and have made the transition down to Asheville full-time this year.
Yeah. So interesting. It's a small world. So Rebecca and I got to know each other through a mutual client. So the Francis House, which is a great organization that's actually based in Syracuse, which is, many of you know, that's where I am. My father is actually the chairman of the board.
Yeah.
Rebecca has been doing some strategy work with the Francis House, and now we're working together on an interesting project for the organization too. So I've gotten an opportunity to get to know Rebecca, and I think you got so many great insights about the space. And we're continuing just our march towards the nonprofit industry. We've done a bunch of episodes on nonprofits to this point. So, okay, this is gonna be good. So you talked a little bit about this, but what types of organizations do you typically work with? What are the problems they're trying to solve?
So whether it's 501c3s, whether it's direct service and 501c3s, as you know, that is such a large umbrella. Like we can talk from hospitals to higher ed to 5-person direct service. So I usually work with organizations in the 7 to 8 figure range in terms of budgets or assets. And so when they come to me, the fun part is they're all at some strategic inflection point. And either that's, hey, we're starting something new and we need to figure out where we're going and how we contribute to this ecosystem, to, hey, we're an established organization and we have an opportunity to do a community-wide initiative that we've never done before. So how do we set this up and structure it? To overarching, we need a whole new strategy. So that's usually when clients come to me, prospects come to me to think about, okay, this is more than just a 2-day workshop. This is really digging in and thinking about the direction of your organization. And I love that part of it because getting into the work, oftentimes the issue or quote unquote problem that a client comes with is not always the thing you end up solving for. And so that's really
almost all the time.
Yeah, that's really part of
It's-
the importance of
yeah.
discovery work with any new client. There's a lot of discovery work that takes place.
Yeah. So is the entry point strategy, which is so broad,
Yeah,
that could mean so many different things to
means
so
so
many
many
different
things.
people.
Yep.
So if that's what they describe the problem as to you, what do you typically find the problem actually is?
So I've done a lot of thinking about this, just working with clients over the years, and I think about it in 4 Ps. So you've got purpose, people, practice, and then your product/your program. So let's say, for an example, a prospective client will come in and say, we really got to focus on a new product or program that we're trying to launch. I'm like, okay, great. And let me understand a little bit more and let me try and scope this out. And again, always discovery work is essential. And your product or program doesn't seem to be tied to your purpose. So let's understand where this falls and how you want to do it. And is this a change? Is this a different scope of the work that you want to do? Or our practices? We got to think differently about how we do the work. We've been doing this work for 30 years. The funding has shifted. So we need to figure out how we are doing this work. And often the conversation always will go back to, well, are the same people in the same seat that were doing this work 30 years ago? And not to say that people can't evolve and grow, which I know we'll talk about later, but it's at a point where the right people in the right seats. And so all those P's are connected, and oftentimes the presenting problem, if you will, may be one of those P's. And then it's, actually, we need to map back to purpose, or we need to think more about your people. And so that's part of the discovery work that I do. And this is where the trust is really important with clients, because they're often coming in vulnerable moments. And so you really
Yep.
need a good and trusted partner to ensure that the work is getting done, not just with fidelity, but with confidentiality and with trust.
Do you find that organizations, because if you talk about an organization that's been doing it for 30 years with the same people,
Yeah.
your funding sources are going to change all the time.
Yeah.
Like, do you find inadvertent mission drift? Like the funding pulls you away from your mission versus finding funding that supports the mission? Is that a common problem?
Constant struggle, right?
Constant struggle?
And this is where being really brutally honest as an organization and as a leader, and you think about your board and you think about leadership, this is where having clear strategic priorities matters. Because if opportunities are presented to you, the question I would advise clients is, what is the opportunity cost? If you are trying to go after something that you have not done before, you are taking away time and resources to go after that, saying, does it even map to what you said your priorities are, let's say, for the next 3 years? And furthermore, does it even map to your mission? And these are actually, if the question is no, it doesn't mean it's an automatic hard stop. It's then a question of, well, is this a new direction we want to go in? And this is a key question between leadership and the board, right? Because your board is the ultimate fiduciary of that organization. And I've been on a lot of boards too. And sometimes it's, I'm sorry, what grant are we writing for? I'm not quite sure how this maps. So
And it's not just nonprofits. This is general business, right? Like
yeah,
it's really easy to get distracted by an opportunity that doesn't align with your strategy and direction.
yes.
And that can be a distraction for a lot of reasons. And I think we'll talk about that in the confines of nonprofits.
Yeah.
But let's go back to like why funding decisions must be grounded in strategy to avoid mission drift and unsustainable growth, and what it means when that happens, because you got to unwind it, which is actually more painful than
Very.
doing it the right way up front.
Yes.
So why do you think strategy and funding can't be separated? What happens when organizations try to do that?
To your point, it's not unlike for-profit, right? Your concept needs to meet an opportunity. And as we think about nonprofit versus for-profit, let's say in for-profit, you have a product that is going to market. The market will tell you if that product is working or not. For nonprofits, there are so many different types of funding. Let's say you have a donor, one donor, two donors who are like, this is my pet project, and I'm going to keep funding it. It doesn't necessarily need to test the market in the same way. So this is where having really strong leadership around, okay, do we want to do this work? How do we want to do this work? And if it just becomes this concept that can't be then operationalized, I joke with clients all the time. I don't want to sit here with you and create an Amazon wish list. This has to be grounded in the market. Your mission needs to meet the market, as does the funding.
It's no different than companies who are building innovative products
Yeah.
or raising money to do it.
Yeah.
If it doesn't work, you've just burned up the money and the ability to go back and ask for more. But it's exactly the same way. Just the reasons people are giving are very different. One is for economic interests in the for-profit space. The other is because somebody is philanthropic and cares very deeply about a thing.
Yes. And I've been on the other side of that, right? And so there's no money that doesn't have strings attached to it. Unless you are so fortunate to get a Mackenzie Scott grant.
Yep.
Right? And you obviously have a lot of input on this too. Do you have the systems in order to do this work well? And this is particularly when it comes to complex state or federal funds in terms of how you bill and where the money's coming from and what you need to track and what systems they want you to have. That's a big lift if you've never done that before. So how much money are you investing? Do you need to invest to actually get this money?
So if I'm working with you, what questions are you going to force me to ask before I sign the grant, right? I'm going to accept this grant. What are you forcing leaders to ask about whether or not this is the right funding for me?
Have you ever done this work before?
It's a good question. Great question.
Have you ever done this work before? And if the answer is yes, okay, then how is your team? What do your systems look like? Are you the one who should be doing it? And has always been a focus on collaboration. And sometimes funders demand that, and sometimes it's more of a soft ask. So how involved does the donor want to be in how you spend that money? How much time is going to be going to manage the donor, who then may change their mind on how you are spending their money, right? So being very clear, and maybe you'll decide.
Does that happen? You can change your mind after you write the check? That happens?
Yes.
So like if it's restricted for a purpose, like they could come back and change it later, or they could at least apply maybe pressure to try to, I guess if they're the ones restricting it, I guess that kind of makes sense. They can do that.
Yes. And I don't like how you're doing the work.
Yep.
And here's this person that I'd love for you to work with to help get this work done, right? So there are weird things that happen. And there are also, sometimes foundations want you to do work in a very specific way. But what are they asking you to do exactly? For how much money? For what duration of time? And I will say, particularly for more direct service work, what kind of data are you required to provide to them? And is that going to necessitate you coming up with an entire new evaluation process and a data process and data systems? And is that part of the money that they're giving you if it's not something you're already doing?
Yeah. So is it fair to like bigger the check, more sophisticated the donor, more sophisticated the team, meaning lots of collaboration, communication, and the expectation bar goes up? Is that typically the case?
I like to say the sophistication bar goes up, but
not all the time.
Not all the time. And this is where organizations can get into trouble because it's so enticing to get to that next rung of, okay, we're just breaking a $4 million budget and we want to be able to increase. How are you going to get there in a way that you don't get yourself into trouble because you can't perform on what you said you're going to do? You don't have the right team in place. You don't have the right systems in place. And when it becomes more complex, and this is where the finance part comes into it, is this a grant where they're giving you money in stages up front, or is it reimbursable? Are you vouchering? And so that is then a question of what's your cash flow?
Yes.
There are plenty of nonprofits that I know today and over the years that if they are working with state funds, and let's say the state says, great, you have this grant for 3 years, but each year we want you to do a continuing funding application. Great. That continuing funding application doesn't get signed until 6 months into your year 2, but you are still expected to run that program. You are maybe dipping into your line of credit. And from my experience, the funders are not reimbursing you with the extra addition of the interest rate that you're paying on top of that line of credit. So this is where cash flow becomes really key. What's your turnaround for accounts receivable, particularly if you're vouchering? And sometimes the vouchering is very complex. So does your staff know how to voucher in a way that
it can be so particular?
Yes.
Like a decimal point's out of place, or there's like there's too much rounding going on like that. I've seen that
Yeah.
So I think that's really well said. Finance plays a really important function. That's what Highline does for nonprofits, like how you voucher, how you track, how you make it streamlined so it's easy to access the information. It's easy to report back up. That takes a curation of a system and an understanding of what you need and changing behavior for how people are working,
Oh,
how they submit documentation, how they
yeah.
approve things, making sure that people are organized and they're timely.
Yes.
It's a pretty big undertaking. I mean, it
Mhm.
sounds simple, but it's actually quite complex
It
when
is,
you introduce human behavior.
particularly if you are dealing with any money that's coming through the feds and down through the state, like Medicaid money, like very strict. And if you do not have systems in place to accurately account for what you are billing for, this is where problems can
Yeah.
occur.
And we've seen it. We've seen people go way off the rails. We usually get called in because they need help. And I've
Yeah.
seen examples where they've gotten really far off the rails with donors. They don't have the documentation to voucher. They've already made the investments, in your point, to go run the program. They get into a conflict and you basically just eroded trust with a donor who isn't going to not only pay you because they don't feel confident that like you can't prove you spent it,
Well,
but you're not going to be able to go back to the well and you're not going to be able to ask them next time. And reputation starts to get damaged too, because a lot of them, especially hyper localized nonprofits, like they do communicate with each other.
oh, there are no secrets, right?
There's no secret.
Everybody knows everybody's business, particularly, depending on where you're operating your
Yeah.
nonprofit. But I mean, I'm curious from your perspective, I've been with organizations and particularly those who start at a grassroots level and now they're 20 or 25 years in and they're still looking at their line items on a massive Excel sheet.
Yeah.
And I don't mean to laugh, but oh my
Yeah.
goodness, we're
No,
20 years
it's
in and this is how we're doing things?
Yeah, there's a lot of administrative bloat. There's a lot of time spent by decision makers and operators in those organizations, like nights and weekends, trying to get through this and get it right and get it submitted at the last minute because they know they need to, but they don't have good systems in place. So the opportunity cost
Yeah.
doing it that way is unmeasurable. And it also generally is not the genius zone of the person running the organization. Like they didn't get into it because they
Yeah.
love finance and vouchering for grants and doing all this
Right.
stuff. It can just be a soul sucking experience. I think it ruins or start to erode their morale, excitement about what they're doing. And what they should be doing is focusing on how do I further the mission and not this stuff. So most of the time, it's not what I describe where it's completely off the rails and they aren't able to voucher because they don't have records.
Right.
More so, it's just an executive director or a team who is completely overwhelmed and not able to keep up. And it's just a huge distraction for them. And it keeps them from being strategic. Just like any business owner or operator, if you don't have the right leverage in the organization, you don't have capacity to be strategic, you're not going to be strategic and you're not going to do the things that you're supposed to be doing. And it's going to be more of the status quo. And it's kind of like a hamster on a wheel. It's really hard to get off if that's just what you're used to.
And this is where, when we talk about life cycles of organizations, it's not just the staff that need to look different as the organization or business progresses along the life cycle. Your board needs to look different too, because it's a lot of weight to carry to be a CEO of an organization. It's a heavier weight to carry if you don't have a good relationship with your board chair or your board. I mean, as you just said, like, where is your time going? And if you don't have the right board matched to the life cycle of the organization that is then hopefully then matched to the leadership, it creates so much tension and wasted time because you do not have a board that understands the right questions. And this is where we get into, did you start as a working board where you were a volunteer organization and you were in the operations? And now you need to be a governing board that stays at a higher level as the ultimate fiduciary and asks the questions that are necessary to ensure the financial and strategic viability of the organization. But you can't let the CEO do their thing.
That's right. And to thread it all together, if you do that right, it helps ensure you match your funding with your strategy because you're keeping each other aligned. You're not drifting. You're on the same page. And, a board or a team, I don't really think anybody should be at a company for 30 years, right? The organization is either not grown or it's outgrown you. And
Yes.
Highline at some point will outgrow me. it's more than likely that it will, right? Like 30 years from now, if I'm still doing it exactly the same way, like we haven't been ambitious enough and we haven't adapted enough, and I think that's okay. I don't know that people are super comfortable with that notion. The same is with the board. If you're a good grassroots board member, that means you like to put your hands in the cookie jar and you want to be involved.
Yes.
But that's not the same skill set that's going to be supporting like a strategic operator who knows what they want to do, but they need governance and they need support to go do that.
Yes. Passion is great. It is not enough. And for folks who may not understand or work in the nonprofit sector, like it's a business, right? It's a business. And we have to think about the services or the work that the organization is doing. Obviously, the difference here is you're reinvesting your funds back into those you serve, but it's still a very complex world. And so that board needs to match the complexity of the organization. And often that's at a mismatch.
I think you're thinking about it the right way, which is like, is this organization at the right stage where I can be most helpful? So I think all this threads together really nicely because this is important, because if you have the right board and they are aligned with your strategy and they're supporting the right operator at the right time of the business, you will make sure that you have the right funding strategy at that time and in that moment. So let's talk about good money some more. And we're going to wrap with some more about the board because we could talk about board stuff for a long time. So like,
yes,
you use good money. You said good money a lot when we first met. So how do you define good money?
First and foremost, it is mapped and meets the moment that you're in as an organization. Let's say you've just completed a whole new strategy and this is a funding source that actually could get you to where you need to go. Like that you're going in with eyes wide open around this, that you have some sense of how this funder works. Now, again, that's not always the case, but that they view the relationship as a partnership and that they are putting their trust in you, that you know how to do the work. And even better, if it's a general operating grant. If it is not a general operating grant, is there enough overhead that you can charge for, that indirect rate or the F&A, facilities administration rate, whatever the funding source is? Or is this something that's going to, as we've talked about, cost you money to take this money? And so I'd like to say that good money is out there. It is not, I think, in the amount that it should be for nonprofits. And there is this misunderstanding, particularly when it comes to nonprofits versus the for-profit, that nonprofits should be starving themselves in order to do the work. Or for all the money, 90% of our money goes to programming. Okay, great. But who do you need to run that programming? People.
Correct. Yep.
Don't you need systems to make sure? So that really is one thing that continues to be a challenge in the sector around proving your worth.
So what you just said, I think, is super important. So what are red flags for you when people are looking at new grants, new donors, and you're working with them?
Yeah.
Don't do this. This is a red flag. This is going to be a problem.
It depends on the funding source, right? So is it a major donor? And is it their pet project? And are they going to want to be really hands-on in how you do that work? And some organizations may say, that's fine, we will manage that, but recognize that you are spending time now managing that donor who's trying to manage your money.
Stakeholder management costs money.
Yes, it does, right? And it requires a certain level of sophistication here to manage major donors. And particularly foundations, kind of ask around and do your homework. Like, what's it like to work with this foundation? And more specifically, what's it like to work with this program officer? Are they going to be your partner in this? Or once you get the money, are they going to have 15 more requirements of you that are not really requirements, but if you don't do it, then it doesn't look good if you try and go up for more money in continuation of that. So this is as much about the people as it is the money. And then if you're looking at federal or state grants, how onerous is the reporting? And is that something you're willing to take on? And what is the data that they are requiring you to submit? And if it is completely outside of your capacity and there is no money within that grant to build that capacity, that would be a red flag. And as we just talked about, is this a reimbursable type of grant where you're going to have to float your expenses? And again, gets back to the conversation of Can you do that? Or are you going to be tapping into a line of credit?
That's where you sit down with someone like Hiline. You're like, all right, well, I need to financially plan for this grant. Can I afford it? Do
Can
I
you
have
afford to
borrowing
take this
capacity?
money?
Is my board okay with me floating this? Are they
Yeah.
okay with me going into my line to support this? Is
Yep.
there risk that it's going to get delayed or blocked? How should boards work with organizations on this? Because you need to figure out how to create the right strategic leverage to make sure that everybody is aligned,
Yep.
right? What does good look like for a board to govern and to ensure that you don't make mistakes when it comes to soliciting money? Because I could also see organizations that need money feeling pressure from the board
Sure.
to go get it.
Yes. I mean, this is where having clear strategic priorities matter. And people do this in all sorts of different ways, and there's overlapping terminology and everything else. But I just think at the heart of it, when people are like, oh, let's do a strategic plan, and the plan is like 10 steps down the road. So from a board perspective, are you clear on what the strategic priorities are of the organization? Because that should drive every decision you're making. And I ask clients, when you think about if we're at the level of doing strategic priorities, really no more than 3 to 4, and really no more than a 3-year focus, because there's so much turmoil in the space and nobody has a crystal ball, and it's really difficult right now in terms of funding. But
Mhm.
whatever the time frame is, get really crisp on what your priorities are and document what is a no or what is a not yet, because then you can come back to that and say, we've already had this conversation. We are not ready for this, or this is just simply going to be mission creep and take us in a direction that we cannot afford to go. And so for the board, it's like, and I've been on boards where, leadership has brought in money for a project that was so wildly out of scope, had no idea that they even were applying for the money, let alone got it. And like, this organization is not in a position to do this well, and we're going to get in trouble.
How does that breakdown happen? Who's not doing their job? Is it the CEO or is it the board? Or is it both?
It's both.
It's both.
It's both, because the number one responsibility of any board is to make sure the right leader is there. So leadership roles are not legacy appointments, although we often treat them like that. And so it is the joint responsibility of the board and the CEO/executive director to make sure there's no daylight. And even if you're a governing board, like, you don't have to be in the weeds of every day-to-day decision that's happening. But my phrase is no surprises should not be coming into a board
My
meeting.
cardinals, if you surprise me, you broke my cardinal. That's the one thing that I care about, is like, you never surprise me
Yes.
with anything.
Yes. And often, too, what I see is the board chair and the CEO relationship is absolutely critical and essential. And oftentimes, just by way of, hey, you've come up on this board as a working board and now you're a board chairs can overstep. And that's a lot to manage for a CEO, particularly if you're a new CEO. And what I also see happen is that there is perhaps a misconception, like, board chairs are working on behalf of the board and facilitating on behalf of the board. They are not working in lieu of the board. And so oftentimes when there's dysfunction at the board, it's like, we don't even know what's going on. Like, we only hear things maybe once every other month. And also, if you use your executive committee to work around bringing things to the board, that is a bad sign. Your executive committee should not be hiding information from the full board. And so particularly, again, as it relates to strategy, if we get back to those 4 Ps, if your people are not right, we can talk about your practice and your programs all you want, but we're going to be back at the same place because we do not have the right people doing the right roles at the right time.
Do you think most people are aware that their job in any organization is to perpetuate it to whatever the next level is? And then at that level, now it is, am I still the right person for the job? Are the people on my team the right people for the job? And do I have the right board?
That
'Cause
requires
term limits should kind of align with that to a certain, you know what I mean? Like, you should be there for a limit because you're trying to achieve whatever is next.
There are wonderful leaders who understand that, right? That maybe I'm only going to be able to give this organization 7 good years because I'm going to need to get out of the way. But the jumping jacks and cartwheels that people do to avoid hard conversations. Because listen, you could have a very good person in the role, but the organization is just stagnant and status quo. And then you've got a board who's, I don't really want to deal with a CEO search. This seems like it's good enough. So it really depends. I think turnover is very healthy for an organization and allows for leadership to come in at the right life cycle of the organization.
Yeah.
And I think it requires a level of humility and self-awareness to say, I've done what I can and I'm not the right leader anymore, or I'm going to retire. And again, particularly in the nonprofit sector, like, I don't think leadership should be legacy appointments. There's got to be new ways of thinking. There's got to be new ways of thinking of the board. And if we go back to that conversation around strategies, it is a constant conversation to be able to look around the corners and see how you are operating in the ecosystem. So it takes some healthy egos to be able.
If you don't deal with it, chaos will reign.
Yes, I love this line. I was at a panel discussion, an HR professional in a Fortune 500 company. He's, you know what? Problems don't age well. And so nurture thing has been spoken, like, problems don't age well. So if we are not having those hard conversations, if we're not actually holding ourselves accountable for our failures, then we are, to your point, perpetuating mediocrity. We are perpetuating something that could be potentially dangerous for the organization. And also, as you think about, if you're direct service too, you've got clients, right? You've got clients that you're serving, and how are you doing the best for them and for the community?
So how does the board evolve over time as they're reaching different life cycle stages? Because like a strategic planning exercise, how long do you recommend that they plan? Is it a multi-year plan? Are you building 5-year strategic plans, 3-year strategic plans, 2-year strategic plans?
It depends. I usually just stick with 3, and it's because I feel like 2 is not enough time and 5 is, in this climate, a little too much to really think through. And I tell folks, I'm like, listen, we are doing the best with the information that we have at this point in time. And part of the work here is we're digging deep in order to get to these strategic priorities and this plan. It is not written in permanent ink. It's written in erasable pen, right? You want it firm enough that you are not subject to shiny object syndrome, but you also want it malleable enough to say, we're a year and a half, 2 years into this, and this is not going well because of X, Y, and Z. And part of this too is failure will happen. And in order
100%.
to understand, it's going to happen.
Yeah. Yep.
And in order to understand where you want to go, you need to be brutally honest with yourself and your team around, how did we get to this point? And what were we good at and what were we not good at?
So when you're building, do you like starting the process with a new board or legacy board members? What's the ideal jumping off point for you?
Oh, I love them both because they're so different, right? Because if you're a new board, it's fresh. And now a new board could just mean it's a new organization. You've got people around the table who've been on multiple boards and they know how this stuff works. And then there may be people like, I've come on because it's the passion of mine. I'm like, great, I'm so happy you're around the table. Do you know what your obligations are? Let's say if you're in New York nonprofit, by New York State, like your duty of care, duty of obligation, duty of loyalty. So those kind of basic things. But my most fun conversations are with older organizations and boards that have been around a long time. And it's like, how are you positively contributing to this organization? And if this is no longer work that you feel you can contribute to, thank you so much for your service.
Yep. Because where I'm going with this is kind of like, you're probably coming in because the organization's going to a different stage. They've hit some type of inflection point. They recognize there's a problem. And as you're building the plan, you're talking about funding. You're talking about how we're going to do it. But you're also talking about, we need to level up the talent.
Yes.
Which includes the board.
You're right.
And all that needs to work.
Yes.
To get to that end point at the end of that 3-year period.
Yes, that is correct. Yes. And for some of
that sounds like so much fun.
It is. It's a blast.
And you're very direct. So I have no doubt that you have no issue saying what needs to be said.
With care. But
with
yeah,
there's no
reason to bring on any consultant who's just not going to shoot it to you straight, because you're making an investment in that. And so that's what I hope I bring to clients, that I want to be able to get you to where you need to go. And we're not going to be shy about what's in the way. And we're also not going to be shy about what some of the new opportunities are.
That's super, super interesting. Okay. So just to put a bow on everything we talked about in terms of what good money looks like and why it's so important to tie funding to strategy. Like parting words for everybody. What do you want people to take away from the conversation?
Let's have some more hard conversations. As we've talked about, problems don't age well. And it's okay to admit if you don't know something, right? So we need some strategy. I call it strategy therapy. We need to really understand as an organization, like as we're moving forward, where do we want to be? Where have we been? What has not worked well? And to really be honest about that as a leader and with your team. And then go have that hard conversation. And as a leader, that hard conversation might be with yourself. Like, how am I contributing to this problem I do not want? And so that requires a lot of self-reflection as well. And that's where I also do executive coaching. That's where that's important to really be like, I need to figure out myself first, because if I am in the privileged position, not only to lead an organization, but to lead a team, I need to do work as well. And I mean, this is hard, but really interesting work. And it doesn't have to be a slog. It can actually be quite innovative, quite creative. We do need to make sure it ties back to reality when we're doing the work. But this can be a really interesting way to figure out how to keep your organization moving forward, not just in a day-to-day way, but in a much broader way that pulls in the board and pulls in leadership and pulls in the entire organization.
Yep. I love that you said that leadership is a privilege, because it is. I think that it's not an ivory tower, it's not an iron throne. Like, it is a privilege, and I think you need to treat it as such. And I think as your CEO, your job is to hoist everybody else in the organization up. And my executive coach says, we are nothing but the dirt upon which everybody else walks on. That's our job.
Yes. Oh my God. That's so great. And I think that is sometimes a misunderstanding in leadership, that no, when you hit that role of leadership, whether it's CEO or senior vice president or whatever the role is, like your role shifts into driving impact through others and ensuring greatness in others. And so that can sometimes be a hard shift, but that is the role of a leader.
Yeah. It's very interesting. So can we wrap it up maybe with some rapid fire questions?
Sure.
Have some fun?
Yeah.
Okay. 2 takeaways you want leaders to act on this week.
Oh, go schedule that hard conversation.
Okay. That's the big one.
That's the big one. And really schedule time for deep thinking. We're often in this mode of meeting to meeting. The real work comes in the deep thinking. Oh, I think it's critical for leaders.
Well, every morning I have focused time block, and I never let anybody use it.
Good.
That's
yes.
me.
Yes. Very good.
If you could instantly fix one common nonprofit challenge, what would it be?
I referenced this earlier. Stop expecting nonprofits to do their work for no money. Let's embrace a model that it takes good talent and good systems to ensure that communities thrive. And let's make sure that we are investing in the infrastructure necessary to make that good work happen.
It's well said. Yeah, it takes dollars to attract good talent.
Yes.
And you got to make sure they have budget to do that. Really well said. Okay. Your dream dinner guest to talk mission, money, and impact, dead or alive?
Ooh, well, I referenced her earlier. I wouldn't mind having dinner with Mackenzie Scott. I'll go to her. This woman has given out something like $19 billion over 5-6 years to 2,000 organizations, and single-handedly has been disrupting how we think about philanthropy. And this is a very trust-based model. And there was just a report that came out for, I think, the Center for Effective Philanthropy, because there was this very paternalistic concern of, oh my goodness, you gave all this money to these nonprofits. How are they possibly going to know what to do with them? And you know what? They have thrived. Unrestricted money that allows them, as we've talked about, to do this deep thinking and innovative work. And so I love the fact that she's trying to give away and do some good, and that it's not about her, but it's about the organizations. And so
that's so cool. I mean, that's I think what's going to make this a better world to live in, if more people took that approach.
Yes.
If you're fortunate enough to accumulate a wealth, I think that's really incredible work, and that's how you make an impact. So I love that. Great answer. Okay. Rebecca, thank you for joining today.
Thank you.
This has been super interesting for me. I'm doing like lots of real-time reflection. But if people want to connect with you or learn more about what you're doing, where can they find you?
They can find me on LinkedIn, Rebecca A. Bostwick, and you can also find me at bostwickstrategygroup.com.
Okay.
All right.
All right, Rebecca, thank you so much for your time today. Really enjoyed it, and we'll talk soon.
All right, great. Thanks, Matt.